Wavesound Audiobooks presents an unabridged recording of Learned Behaviours by Zeynab Gamieldien, narrated by Predny. For M, who grew inside me as I began and out in the world as I concluded. Chapter 1. Now. Zaid Saban's head throbbed. It had not been a productive day, and he was looking at his phone instead of the files he knew he ought to be reviewing. Outside his door, the floor was still and quiet. He had observed that the schedules of the barristers who worked there were variable. On some days, the place burst into activity, people striding through the corridors with their robes flapping about them like butterfly wings, the printer whirring as the final pages of briefs were appended. On other days, it was so devoid of visible activity that he could creep through the corridor and press his fingers against the nameplates of others. He envied their permanence, their sense of unencumbered belonging within these walls. Soon it would be time for Friday drinks in the floor's conference room. Before Zaid had commenced the barrister's readership program several months ago, his tutor James Arnold had mentioned that Oakford Grey was known for its sociable atmosphere. It was true that the barristers on the floor were not unfriendly. Emily Burton asked him for coffee runs most mornings they were in together, and Georgina Shue and Cam Bucknell had been kind to him, taking the time to say hello and ask what matters he was working on. There was even another barrister, Imran Tahir, whose skin was several shades darker than Zaid's and who was a renowned expert on defamation. But even with them, Zaid couldn't relax. Over the years, he had studied how to speak to people, to stand and smile and offer the occasional witticism with a glass of sparkling water in his hand, but simply being present in these settings exhausted him, and afterwards he would go home and fall asleep on the couch, the glass hand tucked under his head. My head hurts. Why are we always on the brink of a Saturday but never quite reaching it? Emily had appeared at his door, a muesli bar in her hand. She broke off a piece of it with her fingers, popping it into her unpainted mouth. Zaid noticed she wore very little makeup, her clothing fitted and unadorned, all angular lines from neckline to shoe. On one occasion, he had seen a label protruding from the crispness of her shirt, and when he had looked up the brand, he discovered that it belonged to a Melbourne-based atelier that used only organic and fair trade cotton. That did not surprise him. Emily had expressed opinions on the need for ethical consumption before, counterbalancing it with the expense it incurred and consequent lack of accessibility.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?